At the very core of Christianity and Islam, you find two incredibly powerful but very different ideas about God: the Trinity on one side and Tawhid on the other. Now, this isn't just some dusty old theological debate. It forces us to ask some huge questions about logic, about love, and even about justice itself. So, let's dive in and really explore the heart of this conflict.
Everything really kicks off with a basic rule of logic, something we use every day without even thinking about it. A thing cannot be A and not A at the same time. You can't be both standing up and sitting down. This simple, fundamental idea, the law of non-contradiction, is right at the center of the whole debate.
So the first major hurdle is a core belief in Christianity, the idea that Jesus is, at the same time, fully God and fully human. Now, from an Islamic perspective, which is grounded in pure monotheism, this immediately raises a huge logical flag. How can one being have two natures that seem to be complete opposites?
And to really get why this is such a big deal, we have to look at this principle of non-contradiction. It's really a cornerstone of all rational thought. It just means something can't be true and false in the same way at the same time. It's simple, right? You're either in the room or you're not. You can't be both. And this is where the problem really snaps into focus. Look at the attributes of God: infinite, all-powerful, eternal. Now look at what it means to be human: limited, weak, mortal. These aren't just different, they are direct opposites. So the question becomes unavoidable: how can a single person possess two sets of qualities that completely exclude each other?
Well, the Christian response doesn't approach this like it's a math problem that needs solving. Instead, it's presented as a profound truth to be accepted. It's reframed. It's not a logical contradiction, but a sacred mystery, a unique union of two distinct natures, divine and human, in one person. The idea here isn't that it's illogical, but that it's a revealed truth that exists beyond the limits of our human logic.
But this whole abstract debate about logic, it's not just a philosophical exercise. It has massive consequences for how each faith sees God's relationship with us. It really shapes the answer to a deeply personal question: how does an all-powerful God even get close to us?
In the Islamic framework of Tawhid, or absolute oneness, God doesn't need to become human to be close. He already is. As the Quran says, He is closer to us than our own jugular vein. This nearness isn't something that has to be achieved. It's just an inherent quality of God's all-encompassing presence.
Christianity, on the other hand, puts forward a different kind of nearness. The argument is that God's closeness needed to be made visible, tangible, something we could actually see and hear and touch. So in this view, God took on the form of humanity to meet us right where we are, in our own world.
And this creates two totally different spiritual dynamics. You could say that in Islam, the path to God involves the servant striving to rise up to God through prayer or through good deeds. But in Christianity, the whole thing is kicked off by God coming down to humanity to meet the servant.
And from that Christian perspective, this coming down isn't a loss of dignity for God. Far from it. It's actually presented as the ultimate act of love and empathy. The thinking is that for God to truly understand and heal our suffering, He had to share in it. It's a closeness that's born not just from presence, but from a shared experience of pain.
Okay, this leads us to another huge point where the paths diverge: the price of forgiveness. How do you balance perfect justice with infinite mercy? It's a tough question, and the two faiths give us radically different answers.
So the Islamic model is really rooted in individual responsibility. The Quran says, no one carries the burden of another. You are accountable for your own actions. Forgiveness requires you to repent and, this is crucial, to make things right with the people you've harmed. The Christian model, though, is based on what's called vicarious atonement, where Christ pays the price for everyone's sin. Here, the requirement is faith, which then leads to a moral transformation.
In this, right here, is the central critique from the Islamic perspective. It's a direct challenge to our most basic sense of fairness. Is it really justice to punish an innocent person for what a guilty person did? It seems to go against the very idea of what justice is. But the Christian response completely reframes the event. It argues this wasn't an unwilling punishment, it was a voluntary sacrifice. From this viewpoint, the crucifixion isn't a failure of justice, it's the ultimate demonstration of love's value. The price that God Himself was willing to pay shows you just how deep His forgiveness runs. Ultimately, when you have a debate this fundamental, it always comes back to the source texts. How reliable are the holy books that these ideas are built on, and how much were they influenced by the cultures they were written in?
So the Islamic critique brings up several historical points. It suggests the title, Son of God, sounds a lot like Greco-Roman myths about demigods like Heracles, and that key Christian concepts like the Logos, or the Word, seem borrowed from Greek philosophy. It also points out that Jesus' divinity was a hot debate for centuries, finally being settled at the Council of Nicaea over 300 years later. And it raises questions about who really wrote the Gospels and why there are variations in the earliest manuscripts.
Now, the Christian defense has an answer for each of these. They argue that the Son of God title is right there in the earliest manuscripts we have, and that early forms of Trinitarian ideas were around from the very beginning of the faith. In this view, the councils didn't invent these doctrines, they just formally affirmed what the church already believed. And as for the differences in the Gospels, they're not seen as contradictions, but as complementary testimonies, like different witnesses describing the same event from different angles.
A perfect example of this is the last words of Jesus on the cross. The Gospels record them differently. Matthew gives us a cry of anguish, Luke reports a peaceful surrender, and John has a final declaration of completion. So, are these irreconcilable contradictions that undermine the whole text, or are they just different facets of one incredibly complex and profound moment?
So, after going through the logic, the theology, and the history, we're left with two very distinct, and it seems, irreconcilable paths to understanding the divine.
On one side, you've got the path of Tawhid. It's a vision of God that's defined by this clear, logical, indivisible oneness. It's a framework that really prioritizes rational coherence and the idea that God is above and beyond creation. And on the other side, you have the path of the Trinity. A vision of God as a relational, revealed mystery who shows his closeness by actually becoming one of us.
And in the end, that's what this entire centuries-long dialogue really boils down to. Is the ultimate truth found in a system that is perfectly logically coherent? Or is it found in a mystery that's been revealed to us, one that we have to grasp through faith, something that goes beyond the very limits of our own reason? That is the fundamental choice at the heart of it all.